Speaking of shakeups, though, if we move south of the border, I mean, the Buffalo Sabres, who have been in a rebuild for what seems like a decade already, seem like they need to now do a rebuild on the rebuild and once again just tear it down to the studs. Like, what are they doing this off season? Are they shipping out Eichel? Is Eichel staying? Are they trying to reload? Is it, accumulate as many draft picks as we can and we go into another 3 or 4 year rebuild? Like, what is the direction you see this franchise that's just been spinning its wheels for so long? Where do they go from here?
Well, part of the problem has been a revolving door in the GM position.
Mm-hmm.
I think this owner, Pegula, came in there he sold all the Sabre fans on the fact that he was a link to the 70s. He was a link to the French Connection. He was a link to that team that went to the finals in 75 and the semis in 80 and he championed that off the ice, right? He promotion wise, affiliation and this. And they got off to some great starts. And then they would fade real fast. And that became their MO up until the last couple seasons when they didn't even really get off to the great starts. Yeah. So you got a real situation there. Sadly, you got Tim Murray as GM, who looked like someone shot his dog when they lost the draft lottery and he couldn't get Connor. Had to settle for Jack Eichel, who is an absolute stud. The guy is a stud on the ice, but he's got a brain full of studs. Mm-hmm. And that's a serious problem. Those comments he made a couple days ago were, I mean, you can't help but listen to that and say that's just such a troubled young man who is reflective of this generation of entitlement. And everybody surmises that he had a hand in what has gone on both behind the bench and in the front office. It always is worrisome. People wonder why a team like the Washington Capitals or a player like Alexander Ovechkin would have to go that length of time before playing in a final and winning the Stanley Cup. I'll tell you why. When you've got a superstar that's got a direct line on his cell to the owner, you got a problem. And that's the way it was in Washington. And the first guy to come in and try and put a spade and break up that pipeline was Dale Hunter. And he went in and it was his way or the highway. And Ovi had no chance but to fit in. And Dale had the best success that team had when Ovi was there. And he lasted what? And boom, he wanted out. He wasn't fired. He wanted out. He said, I can't control that situation. So until they got that situation sorted, and of all people, anybody ever would have thought that it would be Brian McClellan, nobody would have ever figured that. But they found the right guy to come in, who found the right coach, and they got a fit, and they got better, and they won that Stanley Cup. First thing, they knocked off Pittsburgh, then they rolled. Buffalo Sabres need to do the same thing. You got a superstar, got a pipeline to the owner, number one. Now he wants out, no doubt about it. So, Kyle, nothing is going to be bigger in this franchise's history. Reason being we can say that is because they haven't won a cup. They lost in 99. They lost in 75. They've had a couple of good teams. They haven't done that. So now we know nothing is going to be bigger than this trade. What are they going to get for Jack Eichel? They need to hit a home run on this deal. And the fact that they've got to entrust Kevin Adams with this responsibility with an owner that looks like he's having brunch with Dolan there in New York, that's scary, man. No. That's scary. I mean, if Pegula's maybe phoning Melnick for advice, then you know things are really going to go bad, man. I just made that up, by the way. Yeah. Not saying that happened. But, I mean, they have got to hit a home run on the Eichel deal. They absolutely have to, and they have to move him. That's a cancer. It's got to be removed. Number one. Yeah. Number two, you got to find the right GM. And is it Kevin Adams? Look, I'm not going to be a hypocrite on here and come on here and try and blow smoke up my ass and say I knew that Brian McClellan was going to get it done in Washington. Absolutely not. I did not. And I did not think so. So I will give credit to what happens behind the scenes. Because at the end of the day, I am that guy on my couch with a pint watching on TV and making my own assessments. Having said that, right now, I don't know, Kevin Adams is the guy, man, to be making this biggest decision, biggest move in franchise history.
Yeah.
And how much input is he getting from the owner? And look, you're a Sens fan. I don't have to tell you. You're old enough to know I've gone through this era with Melnyk. Mm-hmm. Everything was hunky-dory, and he bought the team in 2003. They were still riding the crest of being one of the best teams in the league, coming off the semifinals. They lose the Leafs in 2004. You finally get rid of Jacques Martin, and you lose the season in 2005. You come back, you pick up Peatley. The pizza line is kicking, and they go all the way to the finals. Murray, who was a much better coach than GM, pumps himself upstairs, revolving door at coaches, team starts to slide, you screw around with Alfie, watershed effect through the organization, Melnyk loses his mind 10 or 15 times publicly, and you are where you are. Mm-hmm. This is where the Sabres are right now. And if they don't stem that tide, and what's to stem? They've been 10 years dragging on exhaust fumes. So to me, they've got to hit a home run on Eichel, and you got to make a decision internally. And I don't know what it is with Kevin Adams, because like I said, could he become the next Brian McClellan? Maybe. I'd take a look at Armstrong in St. Louis, and say, well, at least that guy came from a managerial background for decades coming into that position. And I mean, he lets Mike Yeo go at the end of November, and you replace him with Craig Berube, and you're still in last place on New Year's Eve. Well, then you make a goaltending change, and your goalie kicks out BBs, and you roll. Goes back to what I told you 20 minutes ago. Show me a great coach, and I'll show you a great goaltender. You want to see Montreal beat Toronto? Well, Carey Price better be as close to 2014 to 2017 Carey Price as exists. Otherwise, bye-bye. Mm-hmm. So it's, a lot of this isn't rocket science, bud? Yeah. They've got to hit a home run here on the Eichel deal. If they don't, they're just looking at mediocrity. And I tell you, I got some really good friends that are Sabre fans, and they're just like it's an afterthought even following the team. That's here. Imagine what it must be like in Buffalo. No. So not good.
No. And so obviously in your mind, it's a Eichel must go situation. Let's try and recoup some costs, 100%. Jumpstart the rebuild from there. But, how much of those, if you're a team looking at buying and acquiring Jack Eichel services there, how much of those quote unquote character issues and all of that do you think are inherently built in him, and he's someone you need to actually like psychologically manage and make sure he doesn't mess up your chemistry, versus this is a guy who's just uber competitive and is sick of the dumpster fire that he finds himself in Buffalo, and a change of scenery will actually do him a lot of good and maybe even revitalize his career and meet those standards of not being Connor McDavid-esque, but being selected right behind him there.
You got to lay the law down right away. And I think him going second to McDavid and coming in and seemingly, allegedly, having the impact that he did with the coaches and the managers in Buffalo is an issue. So wherever he goes next, and 100%, I think he has to go. I don't know how he can make the statements he did 4 to 8 hours ago and still remain a Buffalo Sabre. To me, be a miracle, but maybe he does. Maybe he does. Maybe the thing turn around, and maybe in 3 years they win the cup. But I don't see that. But I think you got to bring a guy in like that, Kyle, and make him fit in with your team. Need a small version of an example like that would be Taylor Hall going to Boston. I mean, this guy 3 years ago was a Hart Trophy winner. 17, 18, I believe it was. He won a Hart Trophy in New Jersey. And then he just absolutely started to suck. And then he sucked in Arizona. He sucked in Buffalo and looked disinterested. I mean, I watched those games. And he didn't even want the puck. I mean, he could not have looked more disinterested. Now you go to Boston, and you say what you want about the Bruins, but here's a team in the finals just a couple years ago. They win Game 6 in St. Louis. They had no business losing Game 7. Give the Blues all the credit. Boston loses there. They lose in 2013. They lose in Game 6. Chicago scores 2 goals in 13 seconds to win the Stanley Cup. That was 1 out of 100 chance that was going to happen. That series should have gone 7 games. They win the cup in 2011, and they were all sorts of strong after winning that cup in 72 through the 70s and the 80s and into the early 90s. And then they had a bad period. But there's a mantra there. There's a semblance of a organizational that you have to adhere to. Organizational structure that you have to adhere to. The Taylor Hall came in, and the remnants of Chera just leaving are still there. Patrice Bergeron assumes the C. The perfection line calls the shots. You've got an incredibly strong coach who's been through the ringer there in the NHL, in Bruce Cassidy. Got great assistant coaches. You've got a long-time Boston Bruin as a general manager. Taylor Hall comes in. Hey, buddy, you got no deal next year? You're coming off $8 million to sucking in Buffalo like your previous 3 years? And look what they're getting out of him. That's how you handle Jack Eichel when he goes to another team. Now, I'll tell you where he's going to go. He's going to go to California, and I'm thinking probably the Los Angeles Kings. He's going to get 4,000 miles away from where he was drafted. He needs to go to American city, not a Canadian city, and I think not a market that lives, sleeps, and eats hockey, so he can have a rejuvenation, and he'll get it. He'll get it there. That's my prediction. Is he goes to SoCal or somewhere in the in that area. I would maybe even in Arizona. Who knows? Tockett's gone. They've changed GMs. They've been a disaster off the ice as well. We know the punitive measures in place for the compound. They broke the rules there. So I think he's going to go there, and you need to deal with him immediately as soon as he comes in and establish that just come in and play hockey. Still a young man. He's a superstar, true superstar. And I think he could be a tremendous asset for somebody, and he will be, but he needs to be out of there. So huge move for Buffalo here. They got to hit a home run. Got to hit a home run on this. I mean, the benchmark's always going to be Lindros going, his rights being traded from Quebec to Philly. You're never going to get that. That was then, this is now. But you need to hit a home run in this deal. Yeah.
So you're not buying the rumors that are swirling as far as the Rangers trying to make some sort of a Godfather offer or line up every pick known to mankind to try and acquire his services? You don't think he's going to stay on the Eastern Seaboard then?
I don't. I don't like that really for New York. I think if New York gets goaltending, New York only missed the playoffs this year, in my view, because of off the ice. And Panarin, imagine a player having to leave because of a political situation on the home front. Mm-hmm. And you lose arguably, if not your most talented, your second most talented guy. Got Zibanejad had COVID the start of the year. Did nothing for 20 games. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Had COVID. Panarin. Then you got D'Angelo. 60 points last year as a defenseman. 60 points. Loses his mind on social media because of political and the COVID and the whole 9 yards. Boom. He's out of your lineup. You move Hank, which is fine. He needed to go. You give the reins to Shesterkin and Georgiev there, and they can't stop a beach ball, the first 20 games. And then you're mishandling your first overall pick. Like this, they lost. They didn't make the playoffs because of series of circumstances, not because they needed another guy to come in. They've got ample scoring. They've got great youth. They've got, I'm telling you right now, that goaltending duo there are going to be really good. I'm really bullish on those two goaltenders. I think bringing in Jack Eichel would be a colossal error for the Rangers. Maybe it happens, but look, now you're dealing with everything else that's happened there, right? And the Wilson thing, Dolan, who's mental, and now you gas John Davidson. You go all that expense to bring JD back in the fold, and you gas him after 2 years, allegedly because of performance. You know what? Pull this one and play Jingle Bells. Yeah. Hey, come on. Who are they kidding? Who are they kidding? So you fire JD, you fire your GM, now you fired your coach. Doesn't matter. That team is poised to make some noise. And I'll tell you what, I'd be fearful of them next year. I really would. You got a healthy Panarin, Zibanejad, Lafreniere was really solid the second half. And you're going to get, I mean, how he's not playing minimally 15 minutes a night is just ridiculous. Even Capo was coming along, and he looked like he was scared of his own shadow last year. Mm-hmm. So you got to cut these kids some slack, right? Look at Stützle here in Ottawa. Did nothing second half. That was a hat trick against Winnipeg there Saturday. Whoop-de-doo. He did nothing second half. He's a bona fide stud. Give these kids a couple of years. And the Rangers have a lineup of those guys, man. And I think bringing in Eichel would be a huge mistake there, in my opinion. But we'll see what happens.